Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we conclude with part 7 of the authentic and complete history of the ancient and mystical order Rosae Crucis. An article from the American Rosae Crucis, July 1916, Volume 1, Number 7. The authentic and complete history of the ancient and mystical order Rosae Crucis, compiled by H. Spencer Lewis, F.R.C., Grand Master General and Imperator of the Order in the United States. In concluding this history, I feel I must speak of the establishment of the order in America. I did not realize at the time, possibly I do not thoroughly realize now, the great responsibility and tremendous importance of the undertaking. Daily I am more strongly impressed with its power for good in this country and what it will eventually mean to America and Americans. As the founder, organizer if you will, I have most certainly made a few mistakes in matters important and trivial, with new and different conditions to meet and contend with. Without precedence for many acts I was forced to permit or institute quickly, and with the war in Europe to prevent my rapid communication with the masters abroad, I know I have had to use discretion and judgment requiring more mature understanding than one my age and experience possesses. I would that I could undo some of the errors. I would remove from the hearts and souls of some the memory of anguish, disappointment, and sorrow which I have caused. I shall sometime pay the penalty, however, and I trust that I may have the opportunity to do some kinder acts, sweeter deeds, and more joyous matters to recompense those whom I have pained. It was not until the fall of 1913 that I began my outward activities for the order in this country, and my first acts were a mistake. My instructions plainly said that the order was not to be made concrete until 1915. Well, I knew the year. The figures 1915 were blazoned in my mind. That was to be the great year for America, which many Rosicrucian students had been looking forward to for many years. But my instructions in weird symbolic language required careful translation. Also stated that during the winter of 1914-1915, between December 15th of 1914 and Easter of 1915, I should make such preliminary announcements as would enable me to have my American Supreme Council selected by April 1st and my officers installed by not later than May of 1915. These instructions I had read many times during 1910, 1911, and 1912. During 1913, I was devoted to the preparation of the necessary first papers by the large, illuminated charter to be signed by the selected councilors, and the first black book, which I had to design, letter, and bind myself, not being permitted to have any matter pass from my hands before the order was established. Thus it was that as December of 1913 approached, the figures 1914 of the coming year seemed to stand forth boldly in my consciousness, and my instructions I misinterpreted as being between December 15th and Easter of 1913-1914 instead of 1914-1915. My papers for the preliminary announcement were ready. I anxiously awaited December 15th, and on or about that date, I made my first mistake. I announced to some specially advanced members of the New York Institution for Psychic Research, of which I was then the president, that I would have them meet with me to prepare the way for the establishment of the Order Rosae Crucis in America. A preliminary meeting was held during the winter of 1913-1914, and I was surprised to find no enthusiasm and little interest. Those whom I considered interested displayed no interest, but rather antipathy. I recall well the very rainy night when I wended my way home from a ladies' home on Madison Avenue, with my papers, charter, and black book under my arm, dejected and puzzled. Of the 12 who had assembled out of 20 invited, not even one signed the preliminary organization paper. Was this an indication of what the R.C. would be in America? Was the question I tried to answer later that night in the stillness of my room. Then light came. I discovered my mistake of dates, and the morning's light brought new joy at the thought that no one had signed that paper nearly 12 months before it was time to be signed. The very weather, antipathy, and disinterestedness of those there that night had prevented a grave error on my part. Truly a Rosicrucian lesson, and, strange as it may seem, not one of those 20 supposedly interested men and women have to this day shown any interest whatever in the order in this country. However, the following winter I was even more ready and more prepared to carry out the preliminary work. During the fall of 1914, there came to me a grand old lady who had been a deep student of the occult for many years. She had traveled much abroad in search for knowledge and had been initiated in many forms of our work. Being of royal descent and intimately acquainted with governmental and military authorities here and abroad, she had been entrusted with a special errand and mission connected with the order. Thus, on another rainy night in the month of November, on my own birthday in fact, she unceremoniously and reverently placed in my hands a few papers, a small packet, and a beautiful rose. In addition to these things, she gave me a locket of gold set with stones in symbolical form, containing a rare and historical piece of mineral. The latter was a personal gift to be worn in her remembrance. And ever shall I remember the dear old soul whose days are numbered, but who is sure of a sweet place in the hearts of my wife, my children, and myself. S. of the C. The papers I found to be some of those which the masters had explained to me in Europe in 1909, and which were promised to come to me when I needed them most, by special messenger. The packet contained a seal and an insignia. I was pleased, astounded, and greatly fortified for my work. On or about December the 20th of 1914, I made my preliminary announcement. This time I simply placed a small notice in the personal column of the New York Sunday Herald. It said that the writer would be pleased to hear from ladies and gentlemen interested in the work of the Order of the R.C. The replies were numerous, varied, and very encouraging. Great interest was shown, and the status of most inquirers were pleasing indeed. My next step was to plan a meeting of a few for organization purposes. As I was preparing the notices for the meeting, there came into my business office a man whose art, not trade, was printing. He saw one of the notices, immediately explained his long search for the order in this country and his many years of studying and preparation for it. As soon as I explained my mission and my hopes, he volunteered not only his own help and assistance, but that of a printing firm. His great desire to truly help me, his very unselfish motives, and sincere expressions of his love to earn and deserve by serving man, convinced me that I had met an unaffiliated Rosicrucian such as are born, not made. That man who has since then done so much for our order, who has sacrificed his business interest, his home life, his finances, and his worldly possessions to be loyal to the order, to the cause, to mankind, and to me in my many difficulties, is our present Supreme Secretary General, Thor, to whom I owe much and whom I love as a man, loves a true brother, a true man of God, love, peace, and human understanding. The preliminary meeting was held on February 8th in my offices at 8:30 p.m. I find in my records the following entry regarding that meeting. Meeting was called to order at 8:32 at 80 Fifth Avenue. There were 9 present. The moon was Sagittarius. Adjourned at 9:40 p.m. A paper and some insignia and other interesting exhibits, including the Charter and Black Book, were submitted to those present, and after a brief description of the aims and purposes of the order, the 9 men and women were made a committee to organize a Supreme Council for America. The unusual enthusiasm showed, the deep interest manifested, and the determination to build the order magnificently and nobly in this country was a pleasant experience after the lack of interest shown a year previous. A few days later, one of the editors of the New York Globe called to see me requesting some facts regarding the establishment of the order in America. Be it said that the Globe has always shown a very fair attitude towards all matters of this kind and welcomed every opportunity to present to its intelligent class of readers a conservative announcement of any movement trending to enlighten the populace. On February 24th, a very interesting story appeared in the Globe and at once awakened the minds of many hundreds of seekers for light in many states. Several hundred letters came to Thor as Foundation Secretary, most of them written by conservative, well-educated, and socially prominent businessmen and women. From the batch of letters, about 75 were selected, and a letter was mailed inviting them to attend an organization meeting at the Leslie, West 83rd Street, near West End Avenue on Wednesday evening, March the 3rd. About 80 men and women attended this meeting, among them being several Freemasons bent upon investigating the purposes of the order, and a number of professional and scientific men and women. Most naturally, there were some so-called skeptics present, and there were several who openly charged that it was a religious or spiritual movement. The following explanation was given as the reason for the meeting. I will read from the papers sent from abroad the aims, purposes, teachings, and workings of the order. After that, I will ask those who desire to affiliate with the order to come forward and sign an application for membership, and then, before showing any of the sacred jewels given to me or the signs and seals of the order sent by the masters, I will ask the applicants to sign the preliminary oath in the official black book. About 50 signified their willingness, or rather delight, to take the necessary oath. Some demanded that all the sacred and secret matter be shown them before taking the oath or even signing an application for membership. Naturally, those who took such an attitude, who demanded certain things without even professing their sincere desire to cooperate with us, were denied all information and were invited to retire. None who took such an attitude at that time have ever learned that the light that they sought was possibly through humiliation alone. They are still without the pell of our order. Of the others, the great majority now compose our Supreme Council and constitute the fourth degree, and are the most advanced and enlightened Rosicrucians in America. Their sincerity, faith, and humiliation have been rewarded with the great light. Thus it shall ever be. None can demand, by any right, the light. It was my personal wish that the applicants who passed such investigation as was required by the order should form a council or organize the Supreme Grand Lodge according to the ancient rules. I further desired this council to appoint the officers of the Supreme Grand Lodge and the national executive officers. I did not desire to arbitrarily use the power vested in me, and I felt that far better than merely announcing myself as Grand Master General or Imperator by virtue of the Master's order would be to delegate the selection or election of such a responsible position to this council, which was representative of the thinking and learned classes of the city. Further organization meetings were held at the Hotel Empire on March 23rd, presided over by Dr. Julia Seaton, and at our temporary library at 68 West 71st Street. Finally, on April 1st, a Thursday at 8:30 p.m., about 30 of the most active workers met at the proposed lodge rooms on 7th Avenue, and there, with due form, constituted themselves the Supreme Council, signed an illuminated charter declaring the authoritative, proper, and legal establishment of the A.M.O.R.C. in America, and appointed the national executive officers under signs and seals. That the present Grand Master General and Imperator was then elected and unanimously appointed was a natural sequence of the events which led to that meeting. But it will always be a proud moment, a moment to remember with joy and sacredness, when the 25 counselors, after weeks of deliberation, investigation, and sincere application of its import, arose as a body and rejoicingly signed the American Charter, which installed 14 national officers in their very responsible positions. This charter hangs upon the wall in the Imperator's office in the Supreme Grand Lodge and is destined to be a famous document in American history, designed, executed, and illuminated in all the rich colorings, signs, and decorations used by the ancients in the making of rare and sacred manuscripts. It is not only typical of the finest work in that line, but of the persistent determination of the part of many Americans to bring to this council the noble, austere order, Rosae Crucis. Therefore, various council and committee meetings were held in the order's library. The ancient constitution of the order was slightly modified to meet American conditions. voted upon and adopted, and lodge rooms, the first American Rosae Crucis temple, secured and equipped. On Thursday, the true Rosicrucian Day throughout the world, May 13, 1915, the first true Rosicrucian convocation of the order was held in the temple amid beautiful and inspiring conditions, and all the appointed national officers, the counselors, and a few others were duly initiated into the order, crossed the threshold, and were raised to the dignity of knights, sorors, brothers and sisters of the order Rosae Crucis, in accordance with the true ancient rites and ceremony. What a glorious occasion! Sublime, perfect, sacred, mystic day, May 13, 1915. Long will it be remembered and honored by those who even now remain enthralled by the splendor and significance of the convocation. So rapidly did the announcement of this important convocation spread among advanced occult students that the membership committee found it desirable to invite a number to join with us in spreading the light throughout America. The result was that 2 weeks later, on Thursday, May 27, 1916, 50 more applicants crossed the threshold and were admitted into the first degree as probationers. Thereafter, the regular convocations of the first degree were held twice monthly on Thursday evenings, and the work of illumination and elimination was carried on throughout the warm summer months. Then in July, at one of the convocations, the Grand Deputy Master presented to the Grand Master General and Imperator, on behalf of the lodge, a beautiful silver and gold master's jewel set with a red stone as the lodge's acknowledgement and appreciation of the order's great work. This jewel completed the master's authoritative regalia and made him the acclaimed and legal head of the order in America. As the fall approached, many applications for membership were received from various parts of the United States. Since the Constitution and Charter of the Order calls for the establishment of lodges in large cities of every state, arrangements were made for this work, and the Department of Extension was authorized to look after the national propaganda. The first lodge to be established outside of New York was opened in Pittsburgh, and as other subordinate lodges were opened in Pennsylvania, the Lodge of Pittsburgh became the Grand Lodge for that state. Its wonderful work, enthusiasm, and rapid advancement in the teachings is an excellent testimony to the ability and sincerity and real R.C. love of the Grand Master there and his able officers. The continued spread of the work of the order throughout the United States dependencies and territories is well recorded in the reports published in the American Rosae Crucis for the months of January to June 1916. Lodges now spread across our jurisdiction from San Juan, Puerto Rico to Honolulu, where some military authorities are arranging for a lodge, and from Chicago to Tampa, Florida. Early in August of 1915, a complete report of our American activities and success was sent to the Supreme Grand Lodge of France to be forwarded to the Supreme Council of the World. At the same time, a formal request was made by the Grand Master General on behalf of the Lodge here for a regularly executed paper of sponsorship of the American Order signed by the Supreme Council, should that council deem the status of the American Order sufficient proof that its instructions and laws were being obeyed. On September the 30th, 1915, after a special assembly of the Supreme Council in France, there was prepared and duly issued Pronunciamiento R.F.R.C. number 987432, embodying a manifesto declaring that the Supreme Council and Grand Lodge A.M.O.R.C. of France, on behalf of the Supreme Council A.M.O.R.C. of the world, declared and acknowledged its complete sponsorship of the order in America, confirmed the initiation of the American Imperator and his appointment as dignitary supreme in North America, and verified its issuance of papers, instructions, jewels, seals, etc. to him. This very important document, written on the specialized prepared and watermarked paper of the French Order, was signed and sealed by the present Supreme Grand Master of the Order in France, his officers, and the Grand Master, who at one time initiated the American Imperator into the Order. These signatures, some of them prominent men in military and governmental affairs of France, are accompanied by their official marks and the seals of various sizes and designs, add verity and attractiveness to this unique document. Suspended from the paper itself is one of the curious, old-style wax and paper seals of the order. Bearing its strange, though intelligible, marks and words, the document was enclosed in a lightweight metallic telescope envelope, which was moisture-proof. It was sealed and had the French Order's National or Supreme Council seal impressed in the metal of the container, and bore not only the necessary postage stamps, but others of a military and custom nature, bearing marks of approval and examination abroad. This document, when received and presented to the American Supreme Council in October, brought great joy as the sign of approval and endorsement of the work done here in America by those the French Council had appointed. The document, properly framed and preserving the original container, hangs upon the wall in the Supreme Grand Lodge in New York, beside the American Council Charter, where it may be easily seen and read, for it is written in very fair English. Little more need to be said regarding the work of the order in this country, which is speaking so eloquently for itself. After only 14 months since the first initiation was held in this country, we find the order in many states, lodges being constituted by clergymen, physicians, and very often by men who are very high degree Freemasons. Our rank and file of membership includes, as in other countries, the wealthy merchants, officials, physicians, surgeons, lawyers, scientists, professional men and women, artists, and artisans, even the lower workers in the narrow and humble trades, all working equally for a common good, meeting on a common level. In closing, I must say a word or two of thanks and appreciation to those devout souls, brothers and sisters, who have laid aside their personal interests, their own plans, and possibly achievements during the past 14 months and have given their name, money, and labor so freely, devoting from 20 to 100 hours a week to working with me for the order, and sacrificing many nights a week to assisting in the upbuilding of the order in New York and elsewhere. I have made mistakes, some grievous ones, in my enthusiasm and tedious endeavors, and have thereby brought additional work and worry to my counselors and officers, and they have so nobly accepted the fiat without a word of protest. Their reward, like mine, will come someday in seeing, even if it be at our translation, the rays of the Rosae Crucis illuminating this glorious continent, bringing power, wealth, godliness, and peace profound into every dark and shadowed home and community. So mote it be. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies so we can improve our audio. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description below. Thank you very much.